The Band CAMINO. Not just Camino, not Band CAMINO, the Band CAMINO. It's a full government name. This trio is one of my favorite bands of all time, but they're also one that's difficult to exactly describe or pin a label on. They're rock, yeah, but also heavy on the alternative electronic side, a little indie here and there, and even a little acoustic-folksy from time to time. I've been waiting for the exact right moment to make a video on these guys, and given that they're currently killing it on tour with 5 Seconds of Summer and just dropped a new album, I thought it was the perfect time to finally review them. So sit back, relax, and enjoy, because I listened to every The Band CAMINO album, so you don't have to. In August of 2019, my world would completely change because the Band CAMINO released their EP, Tryhard. If you know anything about the Band CAMINO, you know this one's a heater. Now, I'm not usually one to review EPs in addition to full-length albums in this series, but I've got a lot to say about Tryhard, more than I do about some full-length studio albums that I've talked about on this channel in this series. On top of that, it turned out to be a mainstream breakthrough for the Band CAMINO, and it's just an insanely cool project, so not talking about it, not reviewing it, does kind of feel like a disservice. Now, the Band CAMINO had been making music for, I think, 5 or 6 years at this point, before Tryhard had even dropped. And Tryhard feels like way more of a polished project than any of those past releases. Jeffrey's voice is clearer, the production is way more exciting, and both Jeffrey and Spencer feel a lot more confident in bouncing back and forth on songs. On that note, let's talk about the vocalists of the Band CAMINO, Jeffery Jordan and Spencer Stewart. The Band CAMINO is one of those bands where there are 2 vocalists, each which plays a slightly different role to the other, and that is one of the biggest appeals to the Band CAMINO, at least for me. On top of that, their songwriting style is resounding. Every song hits so incredibly hard, deep in your emotional pathway. And all of that comes together to make Tryhard such a moving and convincing introduction to the Band CAMINO. It's really not hard to hit play on this EP, get to the end, and crave a re-listen. It's just such an addictively catchy and moving EP all in one. On that note, let's talk about the singles used to promote Tryhard. There are 2, but I say technically 3. The main singles used for this EP's promotion are Daphne Blue and See Through, but I also count What I Want, which came out on an EP before it, but then was redone, remastered for the purposes of Tryhard. So if you want to count it as a single, go ahead. If you don't, it doesn't matter. We're all gonna die anyways. As far as proper lead singles go, though, it's pretty hard to go wrong with Daphne Blue. In fact, I think it's hard to do better. This is a rare occurrence where an artist's biggest song, or at least one of them in this case, is also one of their undeniable best. Daphne Blue contains one of the band's most iconic guitar riffs, which apparently started off as just something they would do in soundcheck and then decided to iterate on. The moment I heard this opening guitar line, something awakened in me. I lose control anytime I hear it, man. On top of that, the lyricism is relatable and moving, with themes of longing over ex-loves described in vivid color and emotion. This song is like the Band CAMINO's equivalent of something like Sugar We're Going Down by Fall Out Boy or Jimmy Eat World's The Middle. Daphne Blue is simply timeless, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of it. Now, admittedly, the other single from this EP, See Through, is one that took way longer to grow on me, but after years and years of listening to it, yeah, we've gotten there. It's absolutely another high point of Tryhard, and it's also not difficult to see how it's become one of the Band CAMINO's most streamed tunes over the years. See Through takes its time getting started and ramping up, but once we hit that chorus, it's an explosion of color, angst, emotion, and beyond all else, it's catchy as hell. These days, it feels a little redundant thematically. The Band CAMINO is no stranger to songs about being forgotten or made to feel like an afterthought, and if you ask me, I do think See Through is on the weaker end of tracks that deal in those topics. Nevertheless, See Through is still a Band CAMINO track. There's a really high bar of quality at the end of the day, and it's still incredibly powerful, even if I think other tracks are a little more resounding to me. On that note, let's take a bit of a right turn, and let's go up the ladder a bit and talk about my favorite Band CAMINO song of all time, Hush Hush. For years now, Hush Hush has been my favorite song from the band Camino, a swift wake-up call following what I consider to be a kinda weak start to Try Hard, but we'll talk about that later. If you ask me, Hush Hush is perfect in every way. It thrives on vivid songwriting, which describes an almost shameful and secretive relationship between two people. It also thrives on the pacing front because the faster tempo feels like it perfectly matches this gone in a flash relationship. In that regard, it reminds me of Five Sauce's Talk Fast, another song that's rapidly paced to match its quick love subject matter. The guitar tones are amazing, Jeffrey's vocals are moving, and the song is overall one of the band Camino's catchiest. This song is a perfect introduction to the band Camino if you're trying to get someone invested in love with this band. Yeah, I just love Hush Hush, what can I say? Haunted is another standout track from Try Hard, one that I think I would call a fan favorite. I don't know for certain that it's a fan favorite, I'm pretty sure, okay? Trust me on this one. Anyways, getting back on topic, there's a good reason Haunted is so beloved by so many fans of the band. For me, it's because of the songwriting, which does play into that self-deprecation introduced by See-Through, but leans more into the feeling of the vast emptiness a partner leaves behind in a breakup. Instead of questioning whether someone will pick up the phone and give them the time of day in the first place, Jeffrey and Spencer sing about the crushing reality of not having that special someone anymore. The tone and production match this lyrical storytelling perfectly, going for this echoey and atmospheric alt-rock sound that really makes me picture an empty, haunted house in my head. And now, if we're talking about sleeper hits on Try Hard, let me tell you about a song that I feel like not nearly enough people appreciate, that being Break Me. In a similar vein to Haunted, Break Me feels like another track that builds off of See-Through, this time honing in on the destructive nature of falling for someone who just isn't interested in you. Now, I love the lyricism as much as anything, but for me, Break Me shines as a standout moment on Try Hard on behalf of the instrumental. The production and electronic influence on this entire song is so funky, so damn creative, the guitar tones are so sick, and Jeffrey and Spencer's back and forth is immaculate. I especially love that we get a take of each of them doing a verse and a chorus. It's really cool to hear each of them bring something a little different to their performances. Now, there's one song on Try Hard that I'm not crazy fond of. And it's gonna turn some heads, so if you're wearing socks, please prepare to have them knocked off. I don't really like What I Want. Look, I know this is a hot take. I don't expect any of you to agree with me, but I think What I Want is a sluggishly paced and uneventful track, especially considering it's your very first impression of Try Hard as a listener. That being said, the pacing of What I Want is basically where my distaste starts and ends. The vocals are great, the production is creative and funky. At the end of the day, it's still a Band Camino track. You really can't go too wrong with it. Try Hard is wonderful. It's perfect. It's the best introduction you can give someone to the band Camino. 8 perfect songs. Well, not all perfect. I just bitched about What I Want. But it does raise a very important question. Where does the band Camino go from here? After such a knockout mainstream bit of success, how do they improve on any of this? Two years after Try Hard, the band Camino would come out swinging with their self-titled debut studio album, The Band Camino. This project is so damn cool. I love this album so much. Now, it's kind of essentially more of the same, just in a more fleshed out format than an EP. Self-titled definitely leans more heavy on the alternative indie side with a heavier electronic presence. It's still rock, don't get me wrong. It's just definitely a little less rocky than Try Hard. Like I said though, it's more of the same. You've got the back and forth between Jeffrey and Spencer, you've got great vocals, you got creative production, and that's all I've got. So let's talk about the 3 singles of self-titled, those being Roses, One Last Cigarette, Know It All, Sorry Mom. Those are 4, Dalton, you don't know how to count. We're gonna start in a sort of weird place with a song that I'm personally kind of tired of, that being Roses. Like I said, this song is one that I'm just kind of exhausted over at this point, but that's absolutely due to over-listening across the past 5 years more than anything. I've heard this song a lot, and I needed a cleanse, but now that it's been a while, yeah, I'm still kind of a little sick of it, but it's still a solid track. Roses is peppier and brighter than your typical Band Camino track, taking in a similar approach to something like Everybody Dies and questioning how normalized it is to be overwhelmingly negative these days. The line that sticks with me is right at the end of the chorus. We've got hands and hearts and noses, so stop and smell the f***ing roses. A line that just feels so humanizing and patient to me. At times, the electronic influence and style choices do get a little overwhelming, and I think that's something that's turned me away from the song over the years, but that aside, Roses is still a pretty solid track and an excellent choice for a lead single. Alright, we're gonna come back to our singles in a little bit. I've decided that I kind of want to go chronologically through the album and talk about my thoughts that way. So let's go all the way back to the beginning, which is one song because Roses is track 2, and let's talk about Everybody Dies. So far, the band Camino hasn't completely knocked it out of the park with their opening tracks, but Everybody Dies is at least a step up from what I want, at least as far as I'm concerned. It also takes a more optimistic and bright tone from what you're probably used to from the band Camino. Don't get me wrong, there's still a fair share of apathy and self-deprecation, but Everybody Dies poses a simple and valuable philosophy. We're all gonna die one day, so let's make the most out of life while we've got it. In particular, the line that sticks out to me is, if the song never stopped, it wouldn't have any magic, so even though it's gotta end, I'll keep singing along. Life is special because it's short, because it has a firm end to it. And I think that mindset is applicable to a lot of other aspects of life and events we go through. Slap on some trademark Jeffrey Spencer back and forth as a cherry on top, and you've got one resounding opener in the form of Everybody Dies. In a similar vein to Roses though, a song that I wasn't so fond of on my first few listens, and honestly for the first few years of listening to this album, was Underneath My Skin. Now, while Roses has descended in my ultimate ranking, Underneath My Skin has only climbed higher for me over time as I grew fonder of Spencer as a vocalist. As strange as it sounds, I think I love Underneath My Skin most for its flow. That's not something you usually hear about with alt-rock bands, I get it, but hear me out. Something about Spencer's rhythm and delivery on these lyrics is super engaging for whatever reason. I don't know, it's just catchy. On top of that, this song features one of Garrison's coolest performances on the drums. I feel like this is a song where he really gets to try out some creative shit, especially leading into that final chorus. In a similar vein to Roses, I Think I Like You is one that I've gone a little too hard on over the years, so these days it doesn't rank very highly for me, but it's still an excellent choice as far as songs on this album go. Once again, Garrison really gets to shine on the percussion front, even if his role on this song is a little more straightforward than on something like Underneath My Skin. Beyond that, I think it's a pretty by-the-numbers Band Camino song, but they've also got a pretty high bar for quality, so no complaints here. Coming in right behind Hush Hush at number 2, Self-Titled contains my next favorite song from the band Camino, that being Know It All. The moment I heard this song for the first time, I knew it was my favorite on the entire album, and it's safe to say that nothing has changed in the past 5 years. There's a lot that Know It All does right, but first and foremost are the lyrics, which tell a story about, you guessed it, a former love that isn't there anymore. What sets Know It All apart from the other songs of that nature, however, is the addition of a new partner for the lost love. Know It All revolves around the bitterness of seeing someone else move on, tackling that crippling sensation of watching a partner start over with someone they barely know. I love how angry it comes across, not necessarily at this partner for moving on, not necessarily at the new person for dating this lost partner, just angry at the world, at the circumstances and situation, at everything. Furthermore, I love that Know It All is a little more subtle on the electronic side. Now, I'm not saying I hate the songs on Self-Titled that are more alternative, don't get me wrong, but for a track like Know It All, I think it really benefits from a more standard, try-hard Band Camino formula. This song feels a lot more reminiscent of something like Daphne Blue. At a certain point in time, I think I would have told you that Who Do You Think You Are was my least favorite song on the entire album, and now even if it doesn't rank in the top 5 or super highly these days, I've only grown to love the song more and more over the years. Self-Titled is fast-paced and heavier for those first 5 songs, and Who Do You Think You Are feels like a much-needed moment to catch our breaths and cool off for a bit. It also contains some of my favorite harmonies on the entire album, like this splotch right before the first chorus is one of my favorite moments on the entirety of Self-Titled.
You try to play along, they tell you that you've made it, you try to turn it on, even when you hate it, you're talking.
Who Do You Think You Are is simple stylistically and moving lyrically, and that's more than enough for me to fall in love with this song. Now, if I'm being totally honest, I didn't even realize Sorry Mom has been a single all these years, and it does feel like an off-putting choice to be a single, but I won't lie and say that it's a bad song, because it's one of the best written tracks on the entirety of this album. You can probably allude from the title that Sorry Mom is a deeply personal song, written by Jeffrey almost like a letter or journal entry to his mother. The song is racked with guilt from start to finish, with Jeffrey apologizing for saying things he wishes he could take back, debating his belief in God, and for failing to stay in touch. Jeffrey was 26 when the song came out, and now that I'm 26, I think the perspective is a lot more meaningful and heavy-hitting to me. When you grow up and you look back on your adolescence or even your young adult years, it can be really easy to pull out instances where you absolutely sucked to everyone around you. And I feel like our parents often endure the brunt of that more than anybody else. As I've grown and matured over the years, Sorry Mom has only gotten more relatable to me. And I think it's really expanded on how I carry myself around others. Also, for a weird nitpicky detour for a second, there's a line that really sticks out to me. I'm selfish and stubborn, a terrible big brother. Now that line stuck out to me on my very first listen, not necessarily because of what it said or where it's from, because if you're like me and you love the band as it is, this line should stick out to you like a sore thumb because it's a basically word for word copy from their song Hey Rachel.
I'm selfish, I'm stubborn, a terrible big brother.
Now look, it's probably just a freak coincidence, but I don't know. I haven't been able to get that comparison out of my head since the very first day I listened to Sorry Mom. So I thought I'd bring that up here and see if I'm alone in that, or if there's a group, a support group of trauma victims of As It Is Band CAMINO crossover song plagiarism. This isn't plagiarism. I don't think it is. Like I said, I think it's a freak coincidence. I'm rambling right now. I'm just going to talk about the next song. Now, while Know It All is my favorite song on the entire album, I think the objective crown jewel fan favorite song on Self-Titled has got to be One Last Cigarette. If it were me, this one would have been the lead single over Roses, but I digress. This might sound cheesy, but I'd also probably call One Last Cigarette the most badass song on Self-Titled. There's a lot of tension that swells across each verse, and every chorus is a bold explosion of angst and color. Spencer's performance on the chorus is also knockout. He really gets a chance to belt and yell that never fails to send chills through me. Right up alongside Daphne Blue, I think One Last Cigarette is a perfect song to use as an introduction to make someone fall in love with this band, although you could also just end that sentence after perfect song. Because as far as I'm concerned, this song is perfect. For a hot minute, it felt like Song About You would be a forever staple of the Band CAMINO set list, and while it's not my favorite on Self-Titled, I won't deny that it's an incredible song. This is a rare example of a Band CAMINO track that's angrier than it is sad, a sour and spiteful account of leftover emotions from a past flame. It sees Jeffrey taking on a really unique perspective in the chorus, almost as if questioning how the band writes songs and what that means for his process of moving on in real life. Song About You also features one of Self-Titled's catchiest choruses. I don't know, man. I don't have much to say about Song About You. It's just a solid track. On the other hand, one song that I always tend to forget about is Damage, but on these most recent listens, I've been able to appreciate it for its handling of tone and pacing. Damage is where we see this album start to slow down heading into the conclusion. And this song does a great job of easing us into that slower pacing. It feels almost low-key, like it's too scared to make noise, but that fits perfectly with the retrospective lyrics, which show Spencer reminiscing on the damage that came with a past breakup. Thematically, it's incredibly similar to Know It All in how Spencer expresses the pain of seeing someone else move on, but Damage feels less angry and accusational than Know It All, favoring a more hurt and apathetic tone. To me, the similar subject matter gives it the chance to feel repetitive, but the change in tone neuters that possibility before it even starts. On the note of slowing things down and easing across the finish line, let's talk about the most crushing song on the entire album, Help Me Get Over You. As you can tell from the title, this one's a bundle of f***ing joy. Help Me Get Over You is a song that follows our narrators through the wreckage of a breakup. As compared to songs like Damage and Song About You though, our singer's spite on Help Me Get Over You isn't triggered by a manipulative partner or a messy breakup, although context clues do point to the fact that it was sudden. This is a song where the relationship was great and came to its natural end, with Jeffrey left struggling to move on. This leads him to beg the former partner to essentially give him a reason to hate her, a reason that he can start moving on, even if it's a bald-faced lie. That final line in the chorus, F***ing breaks me every time I listen to it, Jesus Christ. Look, I can't say I've ever been in this position of begging for a reason to move on before, but I know how hard moving on and rebuilding on your own can be in general. Sometimes you just want to scream and find a reason to be angry. Those emotions are nothing if not effective when it comes to moving on. Paired with a mostly simple instrumentation of piano and drums, save for a little electronic distortion later on, Help Me Get Over You is one of my favorite tracks on the entirety of Self-Titled, at least as far as songwriting and thematics go. It just feels so manic and desperate, and Jeffrey's performance perfectly illustrates all of these emotions. Now, I do have two nitpicks of Self-Titled, two songs that I'm not really crazy of, but wouldn't completely always necessarily call skips. And that starts with Just a Phase. Sandwiched directly in between Sorry Mom and One Last Cigarette, Just a Phase is a point where the album kind of lulls for me. I think it's because I'd rather be listening to either song that surrounds it, but that's just me. It's still not that bad of a song. The same can be said of Look Up, which helps to wind down the album in this weird synthy way. It's not a bad song, don't get me wrong, but the same as Just a Phase, when I'm listening to Look Up, I find myself wishing I was listening to either Damage or Help Me Get Over You instead. More often than not, this is the only song I skip on the entire album, but no hate on you if Look Up is your jam. All right. That is Self-Titled. This is one insanely good debut album. I don't know how you do better than this. It's certainly not with the next album that precedes it. Yeah, we're about to take a bit of a nosedive here. Hey, hi there. Just doing a quick check-in. I want to see, you enjoying the video? You liking the content? God, I hope so. If you're not, that means I'm doing something really wrong. Well, if you are, and you're looking for another way to support me and my content, a great way you can do that is by joining my Discord server. It's linked in the description. This is the first place that I'm always going to announce new videos, new Twitch streams. I'm going to even tease videos that haven't even been released yet. You can get sneak peeks of it in there. And it's a cool way to immerse yourself in this community and get to know some other like-minded people, get some new tunes in your library. So if any of that interests you, feel free to hop into the Discord server. We would love to have you there. I'm gonna go to work now, so I'm gonna let you get back to your video, okay? Enjoy the rest of the video, please. I put a lot of hard work into it. August of 2023 would see the release of the Band CAMINO's sophomore album, The Dark. This one's an acquired taste, I think. On the stylistic front, this does feel a little bit of a blander album to me. Less of that alternative presence, more of a straight radio rock sound. It makes the Band CAMINO feel a lot less distinct to me. The high points are great, don't get me wrong, they always are on a Band CAMINO album. But in comparison to their past and future work, The Dark just feels a lot more unmemorable to me. Like its predecessor, The Dark also contains 4 singles, those being Told You So, What Am I Missing, Last Man in the World, and See You Later. Immediately, this is a weaker collection of singles than we've ever been graced with so far, but it does have its high points, one of which being What Am I Missing, which stands out by a metric fucking mile. I do like some of the other singles, don't get me wrong, but I think most of them pale in comparison to this one. What Am I Missing is a song I praise for its creative use of dynamics. The way that this song swells from a delicate quiet into a booming forte for every chorus is so damn powerful and really accentuates the frustration in Jeffrey's voice and words. Each verse feels like a blend of calm and manic, someone scribbling their grievances and frustrations in a journal, whereas the chorus feels like a full mental breakdown, that person losing control and bluntly screaming everything that's on their mind into the void. The production on this track also feels so incredibly unique and distinct to anything they've done before. It feels like you took the dark and spectral Haunted and combined it with the more high-octane One Last Cigarette to put on Self-Titled. What Am I Missing is an incredibly neat fusion of styles, an excellent choice for a single, and a worthy champion of the most streamed song on The Dark, at least if you ask me. Now, as far as non-singles go, Save My Life is halfway decent. It's not perfect, and it certainly doesn't hold up against the high points of Tryhard or Self-Titled, but in the context of Dark, it's certainly a breath of fresh air. It pulls its weight. Save My Life should instantly feel reminiscent of something like See-Through as far as the lyrical themes are concerned. Guy meets girl, girl is really bad for guy, girl is really hot, guy doesn't leave. par for the course. Now, that's not to say the songwriting on Save My Life is entirely redundant or repetitive, because I think the song thrives once it hits the chorus. Whereas See Through takes a pessimistic, you don't care about me, but I'll keep vying for your attention attitude, Save My Life shows the narrator relying on this person like a lifeline. Spencer straight up makes it sound like he is addicted to this girl. Anytime he sings, I can't turn you down to save my life. I love just how descriptive and vibrant the image of this relationship is. Now, like I said, The Dark does have its fair share of high points, and if any one song on this album shines the brightest, it has to be Same Page. Everything about this song is perfect to me, starting with the lyricism. Same Page tells the story of a couple, with the narrator noting how it feels like they just keep going in circles with a few repetitive issues. Despite how everyone perceives their relationship as squeaky clean on the outside, even describing their relationship as perfect on paper, the narrator feels like they're drifting apart and trying too hard to make things work. As someone who has a bit of experience in the realm of heartbreak, Same Page is a song that I think is so damn relatable. That realization of drifting apart and sensation of falling out of love stings like hell. And that's the exact pain that Same Page is rife with. Jeffrey's vocal performance is also perfect for this song. His voice is so full of emotion, but also so steady and confident at the same time. A song that I could have sworn was a single, but apparently isn't, would be Novocaine, which I'd probably call my favorite song in the latter half of the album, second to Same Page. This is a track where I think we see some meaningful growth from the band members, not necessarily as musicians, but as people. Novocaine, to me, is all about a new, healthy relationship, and how those changes, while positive, are still incredibly scary. Now, I want you, yes, you, the viewer watching this at home behind their screen, to take a second and think about the songs we've talked about today. Think about all the self-deprecating and depressing music that this band has to offer. Now keep those in mind while I read off a few of these lyrics from Novocaine. I think I might have messed up. Last night I talked about my past. Somehow you make me say stuff that I never have. Tell me, what did you do? I was kind of getting used to feeling down bad, uptight. Got good at being apathetic, thinking with a one-track mind. Don't know how you manage. I thought all my damage was permanent. I'm in and out of my mind, had every part of me try telling you no way, thinking maybe my veins need a little Novocaine. I'm feeling for the first time. These guys have been hurting for a hot fucking minute. That's never something that they've tried to hide. Novocaine feels so brutally honest and vulnerable on the lyrical front, and that's why I feel like I gravitate so much towards it. It's so open and honest. Finally, while I'm not too crazy about The Dark as a whole entire album / project, I can at least say that it ends off on a good note with one of the band's strongest closing tracks since Break Me, Last Man in the World. The production is great, especially in these subtle electronic blips in each verse. Jeffrey and Spencer's flows are exciting and catchy as hell, but the song primarily shines for me on the instrumental front, thanks in part to the remix featuring guitarist Mateus Sasato. The way this guy shreds on the guitar for the remix is out of this fucking world. He single-handedly takes this kind of by-the-numbers alt-rock track and gives it so much more color and life. As simple as it is, that's about all I have to say about Last Man in the World. It's just a solid instrumental track. All right. Now, this takes us to the songs that I don't like on The Dark, and there's more of them than we're probably used to. So let's start with the lead single, the opening track of the album, Told You So. I apologize if my distaste towards this track feels out of the blue. I really am. But Told You So just boils my blood with how repetitive it is in the chorus and how quickly it becomes stale. It sucks because I really enjoy the guitar tones that the song offers, and I think Spencer's vocals are really solid, especially in the first verse, but not much else about this song really pulls me in or keeps me invested, I'm sorry. The Dark is also no stranger to tracks that are just forgettable duds. I think the middle portion of this album with It's You, Afraid of the Dark, Let It Happen, are all really, really forgettable, don't stand out in any way, shape, or form. But I can't say that about See You Later, a song that's so miserable and shallow and annoying that I skip it every single time. Never have I heard a Band CAMINO song, let alone a single, as obnoxious as See You Later. I know this one's gonna be a nuclear hot take, but since the day this song dropped, I have been its #1 hater. Thematically, it feels like such a one-sided and shallow track. I love the band Camino as songwriters because they're great at balancing descriptive lyricism with colorful imagery, and everything on See You Later just feels so surface level. On top of that, the backing instrumental doesn't do anything all that exciting for me, and the pacing feels sluggish and drawn out for no reason. If you love See You Later, if this is your song that you ride or die by, no hate on you, but it's a contender for my least favorite Band Camino track of all time. All right, so looking back on it, The Dark wasn't as bad as I remember. It's still a Band Camino track. Like I've said, this band has a really high bar for quality. It certainly shines as their worst work to me. That's neither here nor there, though. I've bitched enough about The Dark for now. So let's move on to the next album, which, let me tell you, knocks The Dark out of the park. Hey, that rhymes. NeverAlways, the third studio album from the band Camino, would be released in July of 2025. And this one's a return to form. Maybe return to form isn't the most accurate statement because it really does shake things up pretty substantially from The Dark or self-titled, feeling a lot more tame and reined in stylistically than either of those projects. It's not as experimental as self-titled, not as guitar heavy as The Dark, it's quaint. Yeah, quaint's the word I'm going with. NeverAlways feels like it has a more honest, acoustic tone to it, feeling almost a little folksy at times. Like I said, this is a pretty massive shakeup from what the band Camino knows and loves, but let me tell you, the change paid off. I think my only real complaint about NeverAlways is that it's a very Jeffery-heavy project. This is one where we don't see as much back and forth between Spencer and Jeffery, and don't even really see that much of Spencer at all. I think NeverAlways is incredibly comparable to something like Everyone's a Star by 5 Seconds of Summer to me. That album is very much the Luke Hemmings show, one guy getting to do a ton of heavy lifting on the project when the band's biggest strength is how they balance between multiple vocalists. This is exactly how I feel about NeverAlways. A lot of these songs are just Jeffery, and I love Jeffery dearly as a vocalist, don't get me wrong, but again, the band Camino is usually at their best when Jeffery and Spencer get to play off of one another and contribute equally. That being said though, NeverAlways is still incredibly solid, so let's stop wasting time. Let's talk about this album's 5 singles, those being Infinity, Baggy Jeans, Stupid Question, Hates Me Yet, and What You Can't Have. This is a gnarly collection of singles, but one unequivocally shines above the rest for me, that being Baggy Jeans. Have you ever gone through a breakup where it felt like you were torn limb from limb by heartbreak, but the other person just felt completely unimpacted? Well, if so, you may be entitled to financial compensation, but you're also gonna find Baggy Jeans to be incredibly relatable. This song is all about those types of relationships and breakups. Nonchalance and apathy are the name of the game on Baggy Jeans, with Jeffery and Spencer describing how this hypothetical partner got rid of them like it was nothing, honing in on the fact that the pain they feel isn't reciprocated. The lyrical storytelling is so vivid and emotional, akin to something like Know It All on self-titled. I don't know, man, Baggy Jeans is a powerful song and probably one that I use to make someone fall in love with the band Camino. At one point in time, like 7 or 8 months ago, I would have told you that Pieces was my favorite song on NeverAlways, and while it might not hold that title these days, it still probably cracks the top 3. I've talked about this one on the channel before, so I'll spare you a whole rant, but my appreciation for this song comes primarily from the lyricism. The perspective on this track is great. It doesn't just feel like Jeffery is venting about his insecurities and problems, but also more like a conversation with a therapist or a good friend. It also serves as a decent start to NeverAlways. Not necessarily the same powerful gut punch as something like What I Want or Everybody Dies, but given the new style of NeverAlways, Pieces is a perfect introduction to the album's tone and style. Directly following Pieces is What You Can't Have, an upbeat, almost country-ish inspired acoustic track. This is a song that's so good, so warm and catchy, yet I always forget to return to it. There's no real rhyme or reason to it, I just typically only listen to it when I do a full listen of the album. Regardless, What You Can't Have pairs this bright instrumental with a pretty pointed set of lyrics, all about those toxic partners who insist that if they can't have you, then nobody can. I love how confident these lyrics are. Whereas I think the band Camino often leans into sadness and self-pity in their songwriting, What You Can't Have feels like a step of growth and maturity, standing up for yourself and calling out that manipulative partner on their shit. It's confident, it's catchy, what else can you possibly ask for? As of late, my favorite on NeverAlways has been something of a sleeper hit, Can't Go Back. A slower, almost lo-fi feeling song that brings NeverAlways to a much needed pause. Whereas the band Camino's lyrics often feel one-sided or focused on the self, Can't Go Back is so chilling because it feels like a conversation between two recent exes. The girl, well, I assume they're a girl, because the band Camino loves singing about them, but I suppose they could be any gender. The partner comes back to the narrator asking for a second chance, to which the narrator pushes back and stands by their decision to cut things off, even if they question themselves in that decision. The whole song feels dire and indecisive, going back and forth between, man, we had a lot of really great times together, and no, we broke up for a reason, we can't do this again. Tone, style, songwriting, vocal performances, everything about Can't Go Back is perfect, and it's one of their most underrated tracks, at least if you ask me. Now, staying in that same vein of amazing songwriting, one of the best written tracks on the entire album has to be Me Around You, a song rife with vulnerability, sung by Spencer. Me Around You takes on a lot of similar themes to something like Novocaine in the Dark, a song where Spencer explores the fears of a new love. This time though, instead of the crippling fear of confronting his own emotions, Me Around You hones in on the sensation of opening up to someone and showing them your true colors. Not necessarily in the sense that you have something to hide, but more in line with being afraid to be your most authentic self. I love the perspective in which these lyrics come through too, because you can really tell the hurt that Spencer's been through to make him think this way. This especially becomes apparent in the chorus, where Spencer questions if he'll be taken advantage of. To me, that's a clear indicator of past trauma, and the raw openness and vulnerability that Me Around You offers catches me off guard every time I listen to it. And now for the tryhardiest song on the entire album, let's talk about what I feel like is a fan favorite, that being Stupid Questions. Honestly, this is another one that took its sweet ass time to grow on me, but yeah, it's solid and not difficult to see why it's resonated with so many fans. As I alluded to, it feels like it came straight off of Tryhard, at least as far as the guitars and lyrics are concerned. Like this feels right at home alongside Daphne Blue and See Through. Like, tell me I'm wrong. Now, that's not to say Stupid Question feels dissonant or out of place on NeverAlways in any capacity, because I think it fits in thematically and tonally. There is a little bit of that try-hard sounding production, but it's a less electronic, alternative-y, and more guitar-driven. Does that make sense to anyone else besides me? Now, as far as lead singles go, Infinity is not my personal favorite, but it's leaps and bounds ahead of Told You So I will take what I can get. To me, an effective lead single should be upbeat and exciting, and Infinity is exactly that, with high-octane, drum-driven pacing, and a great back and forth between Jeffrey and Spencer. Once again, we don't get a lot of that on NeverAlways in the first place, so when it does come about, I will be happy about it. Lyrically speaking, it's pretty much just an acid trip. No, I'm not kidding. It's just the guy's hallucinating on drugs. Like, I'm dead serious about this. Go read through the lyrics. To be fair, I could give a bigger damn about the lyrics. Infinity is just catchy and exciting from an instrumental standpoint, and that's good enough for me. As far as their closers go, they still have yet to outdo Break Me in my opinion, but Infinity is probably the best since then. There's only one song on NeverAlways that's failed to grab me in the years since it's came out, only one that's been sort of lukewarm while everything else has grown on me, and that would be Limbo. I think once we get to the chorus, my interest peaks up a little bit, but the verses feel a little disjointed and sluggish for my tastes. I don't know, it sounds kind of nitpicky now that I'm saying it out loud, but you know, I'm just not crazy about it. No hate towards you if you love this one. So yeah, NeverAlways is great, just as good as I imagine. But what if there was NeverAlways 2? In May of this year, the band Camino came out with a brand new surprise, NeverAlways Volume 2. 11 new tracks that didn't make the cut for NeverAlways Volume 1. It's alright. NeverAlways Volume 2 is great if you're looking for just a few standalone tracks to bop to, but for me, it immediately starts falling off if you consider it a full and complete album. Most of these feel like B-sides that didn't make the cut onto NeverAlways Volume 1, and as a result, it feels a little disjointed and loses a few points on the ranking scale for that reason. It's also pretty clear why these songs didn't make the cut for Volume 1 because they all feel very different stylistically. Most of these songs don't really feel like they'd fit in on Volume 1, at least as far as their styles are concerned. If anything, they feel more reminiscent of other Band Camino projects. That's neither here nor there though. I don't have a lot of notes about Volume 2, so we're just gonna kind of speed run through these, starting with the singles. 1234, Afterthought, Holly, and Do What You Gotta Do. The crown jewel of Volume 2, in my opinion, the song that stands out against all of the rest has to be Afterthought. This one took its sweet ass time to grow on me, and I really only got into it with the release of Volume 2, but nowadays, I think it's in my top 5 Band CAMINO songs of all time. To nobody's surprise, this is a song that shines on a songwriting front. Afterthought feels like a callback to What Am I Missing to Me, a narrator who's been repressing all these aggressive emotions and now finally explodes. Personally, even with its slower pacing, I find it to be one of the most cathartic tracks in the entire Band CAMINO catalog. If you've got a shitty ex, or hey, even a shitty partner that drives you wild and strings you along, blast Afterthought at your speaker's max capacity on a drive home from work. I think you'll find it's pretty cathartic too. On the same day as the announcement of Volume 2, the Band CAMINO also put out a single called Holly. And this song is so damn warm, bright, catchy. It's so cool. Honestly, I'm shocked it took this long to get the song on streaming, but to be fair, I think the timing with this song's release was perfect. Holly dropped right as the weather was starting to lighten up and temperatures were beginning to rise, and for a song that's this carefree and lovey-dovey, I feel like that is the perfect choice. Holly's also neat because it contains the first key change in Band CAMINO history. Yeah, I was just as shocked as you to find that out. 10 years in the making, that's what it took to get a key change. It's a good one, by the way. It really catches you off guard. Of any track on Volume 2, I think the one that would have fit in the most on Volume 1 would probably be Do What You Gotta Do. Yet another breakup song. This one has a more amicable and brutally honest tone where the narrator, Spencer in this case, talks about how he knows he's holding his partner back from reaching their true potential. Alright, maybe amicable wasn't the right word. I think the more accurate way that I can describe this is knowing how the story ends. Being so in tune with your partner that you can even tell when the relationship is over. Yeah, that's all I wrote for Do What You Gotta Do. It's good. I think it needs more time to grow on me, to be honest. I haven't spent much time with this song. Now, second to Afterthought, if I had to pick a favorite song on NeverAlways Volume 2, I gotta go with Talk Cheap, Die Broke. In similarity to Do What You Gotta Do, this is another track that feels like it would have fit in perfectly on Volume 1, at least as far as its style is concerned. Thematically, however, it feels a little more optimistic, taking a tone similar to Novocaine or Me Around You, and putting the focus on rambling about yourself over being scared about what someone thinks. In a similar vein to Holly, it feels dreamlike to an extent, honed in on the overwhelming but exciting feeling of a new relationship and getting to know someone better. Once again, Talk Cheap, Die Broke is contagiously catchy. This song never fails to get stuck in my head, especially in the I can't stop talking to you line repeat in each pre-chorus. Now, there aren't necessarily any skips on NeverAlways Volume 2 per se, just a lot of songs that I think need more time to resonate and stick with me. For instance, I see a lot of people touting Mascara as their favorite track, but I don't know, it hasn't stuck with me like I'd like it to. Again, I think this is just a matter of time and repetition, and I'm sure a year or two down the road, I'm gonna fall in love with every single one of these songs, but that's neither here nor there. For now, we gotta rank these suckers. So let's go. Hold up there, Buster. We're not done yet. The Band CAMINO has a ton of scattered singles and EPs that we need to talk about in some capacity. Normally, I don't do that. I stick to the full studio releases, but in this context, some of the Band CAMINO's most influential and impactful songs are within these EPs and singles. So let's lightning round, starting from the beginning. 2016 saw the release of the EP My Thoughts on You, containing one of their most influential songs, 214. This is the band's first released song, if I remember correctly, and one of their most famous. It's not hard to see why, with their resounding lyrical storytelling about a one-night stand turned I love you, and it makes for a perfect introduction to the band. Now, you ever go through a relationship where you're clearly the rebound and you're just kind of an afterthought used for pleasure and release? That's exactly what Free of Charge is about, how it feels to be picked up and discarded just so someone can move on. Look, what can I say about the Black and White that hasn't already been said? This is arguably Spencer's best performance on any Band CAMINO track, and one of their most chilling choruses at that. A year later in 2017, a new EP, Heaven, would come out, containing 3 tracks I want to talk about, starting with California. This is a very cool kickoff to the EP. It's not one that I go back to super frequently, but every time I cue it up, California is a pretty high point. If I'm being so honest, this song probably cracks my top 5, or at least my top 10. I love the echoey tone they've got going on this piano. It helps bring these lyrics to life, makes everything feel so empty and alone. The tone of this song is perfect. As far as the title track is concerned, it's got quite the catchy chorus. Yep, that's all I got on Heaven. The next EP would be Tryhard in 2019, but we've already talked about that, so let's move on to Bruises in 2024. I actually quite despise this EP. It's not my favorite work from them, but I always come back to nostalgia. This song always gets me in my feels, man. And on that note, let's talk about some scattered singles from days of Band CAMINO past, starting with I Spend Too Much Time in My Room. That's just fine, I think. It's nothing too crazy. It's a little on the nose and blunt from a lyrical standpoint. It doesn't leave much to subtlety. But I will say it's a very cool first inkling of the Band CAMINO easing into a more alternative, electronic, experimental sound. Kind of seems like the first hint of what would eventually become something like Tryhard. Ooh, this is a good song. The Band CAMINO is often at their best when their songs lose themselves in thought, overthinking about what could have been and what their exes are doing at that very moment. That's exactly where Less Than I Do shines, which also feels a little more sympathetic than the Band CAMINO is used to. The Band CAMINO also shines with faster paced rock tracks. I can't believe this one has been off the set list for as long as it has, so guys, bring it back, you cowards. Yeah, look, this one's good, you already know that though. Chelsea Cutler crushes, obviously, but the way she and Spencer play off of one another, telling two sides of the same story, is so damn cool. I also love the lyricism in wordplay with the title of the song. It's not necessarily crying over you in the context of crying because someone broke your heart. It's I choose to cry over being in a relationship with you. That's fucking chilling. And obviously we're not gonna do a Band CAMINO video without talking about Never a Good Time. The Band CAMINO already loves fiddling around with funky electronic production, so pairing them with a Swedish DJ duo feels like a no-brainer. And yeah, the song is really solid too. Another one that I feel like I constantly forget about until I do a full catalog listen. I'm not gonna be ranking any of these EPs and singles alongside the full albums we've talked about because that doesn't really feel like a fair comparison. If you want to rank them, feel free to go ahead in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on these earlier pieces of work. But without further ado, let's actually rank these albums now. Number 5, The Dark. As I've said, this release feels so confusing and disjointed to me. I want to like it, and there are parts that I really do, but more often than not, I find it's a project that always just kind of disappoints me. Number 4, NeverAlways Volume 2. Given time, I think I can see NeverAlways Volume 2 growing on me and climbing a bit higher on the ranks, but right now it just feels a little too fresh. I don't know, I haven't fallen in love with it like I'd really like to. Number 3, NeverAlways Volume 1. All right, this is where we really get exciting. There's a good reason that NeverAlways was my album of the year last year. Even if it's partially because I didn't really get around to Turnstile until this year. It's such a massive and creative shakeup from what the band is used to. They went out on a limb and tried something new, and it went perfectly. Number 2, Tryhard. Look, how can you not love Tryhard? This is a perfect EP from start to finish, and probably my favorite EP in general, although I'm not even sure what would really come close. If you've never listened to the Band CAMINO before, and this video has you wanting to dive right in, Tryhard is the perfect place to get started. And at number 1, Self-Titled. I went back and forth for days, trying to decide if Tryhard or Self-Titled would take the number 1 slot, but I think I gotta give it to Self-Titled on the basis that there's just more Band CAMINO to enjoy. It lasts longer. It's not just 7 more songs of bloat though. The pacing is incredible. It never feels like it lulls or drags at any point while keeping up and iterating on the sound they established with Tryhard. It's just perfect. How can you not love this album?